Well, here we are. This is the last update for the year, at least for the summer anyways. Weather finally got nice here. It's time to move outside to do a few things. I made work a little here and there on the layout, but I've got to go back to the bench. I've got another shay I'm working on, and I've got a few other projects that I want to spend a little bit of time I do spend in the summertime working on those things. But here we are at Cliff Top again, and the biggest thing I probably did since the last update was I've got all the lights installed. As you can see, the one room light in here is off, so this is what it will look like. And I've got a big story about all that, and it was a real pain. It took me weeks to kind of figure out what was going on. And then another thing you can see here over at the strip tipple is I put the selector switch in for the cameras, and I spent about 2 weeks fiddling with the cameras in here, and I've decided to take the cameras out. And the reason why I'm taking the cameras out is they don't give you any better view than you can get just by looking at it. And it might even be a worse view. And the reason why is the cameras are not wide enough angled lenses on them that when I put them, I moved them, there was one here, here, and here. And when I turned the camera on, they were pretty much a close-up of the two chutes, and you could barely see the car. And if I got it to see the car, it really didn't show any more than the top of the car. You know, and I could go back to putting one at the end and maybe one at this end and have them kind of shine down through there. But again, the view is no better than you can see right here, and it might even be worse because those cameras require a good amount of light to get more than a grainy image out of them. But the cameras were cheap, so it wasn't a total loss. I wasn't ever really happy with how bulky this thing is, so now I'm just gonna move it so it's just this thing sticking out of the fascia. And I decided to take those cameras and I'm gonna hide them in the scenery in places where there's like a really interesting shot. And then I'll run the wires back to, you know, maybe like if I have my operator's desk underneath here, I'll have those cameras wired, and I can actually get some nice rail fanning vantage points for, you know, when I'm sitting there and I'm not operating, I can just watch trains run. So I'll find use for them. They're good cameras. They give a good image. I might put one above staging. I have some wireless cameras that I got from Harbor Freight, but the wireless cameras kind of have a broken image. They kind of, you know, the image kind of is jerky. It's not nice and smooth as like a wired camera is. But anyways, let's get back to this lighting stuff right here real quick. And you can see here on this 3D printed pieces I have here that I have mounted the lights on, you can see how this one warped right here. And if you remember the last video I talked about mounting the lights on pieces of metal I was going to put on here. But I was down at the other part of the layout down here, and I took a temperature reading down here at these lights, and these lights are just really cold, and I thought that just seems really strange. And so I thought maybe the problem is that it was too long of a string to go all the way around this whole loop here, and there's just too much current at the start, because if I touched over here, it was ice cold. If I came over here, you can see again, it totally warped all this. So I went down and found the middle, and I cut all the connections through there, and I ran another set of wires up underneath the layout from this side, and I turned it back on again, and then all of a sudden this side got smoking hot and this side got smoking hot. But when I got down to the middle, it was cold as can be down here. So then I thought, what is going on there? And after a bunch of messing around, and I changed the gauge of the wires up here, I realized I had the power supply set to 14 volts. There's a little trim pot right there that was cranked wide open, and I didn't remember when I did it on my other layout that I turned that down to 12 volts. So the power pack that was supplying power to the layouts to the lights on the other part of the layout was from my old layout at my old house, which I installed, you know, probably 8 years ago, and I just didn't remember that I had to adjust that little pot there. So it took me forever, and I smoked 2 of these dimmer packs. They just completely disintegrated. And you can see I was here messing around with all kinds of wiring here, trying to figure out what was going on. This is all temporary. I got some terminal strips that now I know what's going on. I'm going to straighten all this out. I'm actually going to bring the dimmers from the other side of the layout. I'm just going to make a whole section here of dimmers. I'm gonna bring all the power supplies over here. And you can see these two are running here with those quiet fans. They're just super quiet, really nice power packs. So I'll have another one sitting in here on this shelf, and that'll all be kind of in this little control center I've got here with my DCC stuff all down in here, and kind of a little storage shelf. I'll have throttles hung over here. So it'll be kind of a nice area to have all that stuff in one spot. So here you can see all the cliff top LEDs. I've got the one blue row that's on. I just leave it set to blue, and then I've got the warm white and the cool whites on. Two rows are at different angles. They're a little bit, this group here will cast the light more that way, while this one kind of cast it down this way, and it is plenty bright enough. So you can see that's a good look here. But now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn the dimmers down on the white LEDs, and you can see what the night effect looks like. So this is kind of what it's gonna look like when we do the nighttime running in here. So that's a pretty cool effect. It's actually a little brighter on the camera as I'm looking through it, but it gives a really good look here. You can see over here. And as you can see, there's some scenery profile started here. We'll talk about that in a minute here, but it's kind of a neat look. It'd be fun to operate. Really makes the panel lights pop out. So real quick on the lighting here. Now that this lighting is all kind of figured out, working good here, the next thing I'm gonna do is I've made these 6-inch valance panels that'll go up and hide all that, and that'll make a nice finished look to this. I've got them to go, they'll go all the way around the front here, follow that in. And then one more thing I did here before we leave Cliff Top is I had a little bit of a problem with the grade right coming past this switch here to this mine as we leave Cliff Top. If I can see, if I can get a shot in there, if you look way in there, that is the top of the plywood that goes over the part that you walk under down under there, going to Landisburg. And originally I had this 1.5 inch spline roadbed sitting on top of that 3/4 inch plywood, and then it started its descending grade, which really isn't that much. It's just a 2-inch drop over this whole area here, which is pretty steep, but it's not ridiculously steep. But when I did a grade check on this whole thing, you can see I did the thing here where I marked off 1 foot intervals, and I used my laser level, and I got all these between here and that top. It made a 5.5% hump just in that one spot. So I got in there with a multi-tool, and I made a cut right above the plywood in there, and took a 1/2 inch piece of the homosote out of there, or it's probably 3/4 inch, but it was about the best I could do to get that tool in there and cut all the way through the homosote. And then just dropping it that little bit made a significant impact. You can see the grade almost looks flat through here now. It's very little grade, and the trains go over that just fine. Loaded train, I pulled 11 cars of loaded coal up that, and it didn't miss a beat. So that's good to have that solved. Okay, so as you can see here, I got a little carried away one day with some foam, and I started working through the junction here just to kind of see how the creek bed would look in relation to the track up here. And so I just started gluing a couple of chunks in here, and next thing I know, I'm gluing it all in. And right in this section, these are actually the ones that I haven't glued them together yet, but these are the ones that are going to hide those turnout controls back there. This one here is glued in, and then this will be the first one of the removable section, and then this one is, I think, this is the last one here. So all these will be glued together, and I'll show you how I do the seams here to make them completely invisible. I've done these before. I did them on my previous layout. I did it on my HO scale layout, and it's a really easy way to make those seams work out. But then here, I'm just not good at doing foam. I don't know. Some people just have a knack for carving that stuff, and I just don't. So I switched over to the lattice here of the cardboard. And just a quick note, I set my table saw rip fence for 1 inch and I ran a box through there. It was like I don't know, it was like a table box. My son bought a table for his house. I grabbed the box, turned that thing into 1 inch strips in about 1 minute flat. So if you guys are looking at cutting a lot of strips, that's a good way. A couple of them leaves a little fuzzies here and there, but you know, whatever, it's covered by foam or by plaster anyways. But you can kind of see how this scene is going to take shape here. Down where that flat piece is, I'm going to build it up one more, probably 1 more inch there. And then that will be also a removable piece that will kind of overlap, and some bushes that'll be, I'll make the riverbank on the permanent side here, and that'll come up, and then there'll be like a line of, you know, bushes or something that'll hide that bottom seam there. But that way the river will be completely modeled on the permanent section, and then the hill will be on the removable section. But I want to do that because it's, as I was working on this, it's a really neat scene to look back this way. This will be a great photo, you know, opportunity right there. But you can see, it's hard to see from this angle, but the river kind of falls off on these little different ledges as it works down, and it kind of makes a little visual trickery as it turns that way, and then there's a little bump of foam there that'll make it look like it goes that way, but when you're on the other side, you can't see up there. So we'll go down there in a second here. So this is what it kind of looks like from the bottom side here, and you can see the hill goes up, and with some carefully placed trees in here, especially if I leave a gap between a group of trees here and here, from the upper part it'll look like that just comes off, but you can't, it's too high here. This is, you know, 6 feet high off the floor I'm standing on right here, so it'd be really hard to see what's going on there. And plus the hill will come up through here, so you won't be able to see any of that. It'll pretty much just look like that. So that's kind of a neat thing that's going on here. Right here, I just started stacking up some foam to see how I'm going to make this transition here. And it's going to be a little bit trickier than I thought. This cliff's going to almost be vertical rocks up and through here, which isn't unheard of. But I feel like I'm using the trick maybe just a little too much, because I'm going to have this here, and I'm going to have it right up here, and then I'm going to have it right here to hide that edge right there. And I just don't want to make sure, I want to make sure I'm not overusing it too much, especially when we get right here. There'll be another one that's kind of right where this is. There's not a lot of space between this track and the backdrop, so you can see where I'm planning on making the top of that will kind of come along here. And then as this curves away, there's a lot more space back there, so the hill will lay back more back there. And I started doing another, laying another stream in through here. This is just kind of stacked and lightly glued in here, but I'll finish that more. And then I'm gonna put a board in across here and cut this one piece. You can't see it, it's underneath this temporary piece of scenery here, but I'm gonna make a lift out axis here just so I can get back at that track, because with scenery in here, this is just gonna be really hard to get through there. So if anything happens back there, at least I'll have some way of getting at it. You know, so far I haven't had any derailments up there, but you can't say you'll never have one, because, you know, it's just bound to happen someday. Right here, if you're familiar with the Mans Creek, they had a trestle called Tank Trestle. I decided I'm gonna put it in right here. And even though it's a shortened version of it, you can kind of see this will be that steel span, and I've got, you know, what, 1, 2, 3 bents on this side and 4 on this side. It'll still be a way to kind of include a kind of a compressed version of it. It is the scale height. It should be really up there somewhere, like over here, and that should go back and come back, and the whole thing's mirrored. Everything's kind of wrong about it, but it's the best place I could get to fit it in. I've leveled the grade here. I think I've talked about this already. I've fixed this grade down here. I've got the lights here that are going to go up in this section here. Just did a little playing around. I hurt my back, so I wasn't able to do much layout work, and so this foam stuff's kind of easy to do. I could just stand here and hack away at it. I put these pieces in here because when I raised this up, it wanted to pull the roadbed kind of tipped, so I made these pieces of masonite and clamped and glued them in here so that it didn't want to tip on top of the risers here. But what also this does here is when I cut this piece here, this helps reinforce this, the way this is holding this. So I raised this all up, I tipped this level, I clamped and glued it all, and now when I cut this, this shouldn't spring out of place here, because what I'm worried about on this piece here is that somewhere within this distance here is holding this kind of vertical curve right here. As this thing kind of comes up a little bit of a steeper grade, I wanted it to level off. There's barely any grade across this trestle, and then it kind of, you can almost see it kind of steepen up here. So I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to actually reinforce the side of this by gluing on just some 1-inch masonite strips that'll start from here and go to here. I'll just clamp them, and that way when those dry, that'll keep whatever vertical curve is this way. And then I'm going to do the same through from here to this one, and that'll keep any kind of vertical curve that's being forced in right here. That way when I cut that, these things don't just kind of go boing, and then this one kind of goes boing, and then I got this bridge that's got all these weird transitions in it. I'll probably do the same right there and right there, and then when I do the one down there, I'll do the same thing. So down here at Sewell, I did put that temporary piece of homo soot in here just because I had it, and I had 2 pieces of flex track, which were almost the perfect length. I did have to make a little bit of rail in right here, but that was allowed me to kind of test the curves and the placement of where the tipple's going to be. And I printed out this kind of shape of the bents. So this would be the ones underneath the dump house. They kind of have these weird concrete piers that are, the ground kind of comes down touching these points right here, so not much sticks out. But I'm going to print them this size so that I can set them on a flat board. So I'm actually going to make a piece of foam, a 2-inch foam in here with a back and a bottom, and then I'm going to build a ledge in there. And if all the bents have the same height in the bottom as they go up the hill there, then I can just have one slab, and I know the whole thing will be level. And then and then I'll just build the trestle bents, whatever it takes to get up to the top. But if I put this underneath here, you can kind of see I have a piece of foam there that I've been goofing around with the scenery contours. This will be somewhere in like right about there, and you can see that the slope of the hill is a little too steep. So I'm gonna have to move it so that it's more like, so it looks pretty much like that sticking out of the ground. Of course, it'll be level like that, but now I kind of know where I'm going with that. My goal is by fall, I'm going to have Mans Creek Shea number 5 built. I've already got it on the bench there. And I'm going to have the dump trestle, the new one, all built on that piece of foam, so I can bring it in and set it back in there and hook it up, because I want to be dumping coal by Christmas time. So the other thing I did here was I laid all the tracks up here at mine 7. So I've come through the backdrop, made this turnout, laid this up to here, and I did build the bench work in there for the hidden staging. I just haven't installed it yet. I got to build some brackets and do a few things here. And this is just some insulation that's made out of ground up blue jeans of all things. So it looks kind of funny. That just separates the furnace room from here. I did that thinking it might reduce the noise when my son had his bedroom in here, but anyways, so that's the track going to the hidden staging. And then if you come back up here, I've got, of course, a piece of foam from the old layout that's just sitting in here to kind of give an idea what it might look like. This track comes in down here, and then you've got the tracks laid for the mine 7 tipple. And then in here, I did some more of those things where I've got the turnout controls here. Originally was cut a hole there because I was going to put the tortoise there and then access it from the aisle on the other side. But for some reason, I just decided I didn't like to do that. So I ran another one of these kind of right angle direction changer deals I made here with the pivot. And I've got another control rod that runs along back there, goes down into there, and then there you can see the 2 tortoise switch machines, the one for that turnout and the one that we just looked at. Now this one has another weird thing I made here, is it's kind of It's a rod that comes through up there to throw that turnout. There's like a hole drilled horizontal through the roadbed, and then there's a lever that goes down almost to the bottom down there and comes across. And the reason for that is I want to have a stream come across the top of here, so I didn't want anything on this side of it here. And then I'm going to do another trick where I'm going to kind of make the stream go out a little bit away from the grade right here, and I'm going to put some trees right in here and put some overhanging trees over here. And I do that trick where you take the trackside scenery backdrop and I run it back in that opening, and it kind of really hides that look. I'm going to run it all the way through to that other side over there. And with it coming across the top, your eye just can't quite find the edge. You can see it when you're looking straight at it, but since you're going to be back here with some scenery right here, a well-placed tree with a branch hanging over will be perfect enough to hide that opening right there. And again, this will be a stream kind of running through here. Now, one thing I've got a little bit of a problem up here is with this 1/4 inch top on here and the 1/4 inch plywood bottom here, there's a cavity under here. It's 1.5 inch cavity. And it actually acts kind of like an acoustic guitar. It's really loud up here. And when trains run on here, they're really loud. And so what I think I'm going to do is, it's too late to take this out. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have put this here. I should have probably put either foam in here or something. But what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to stuff some insulation or something in between the two of these, and hopefully that'll stop that kind of resonance, that noise that makes. So one thing I did here is I put this water tank in here. I started building this on the Old Man's Creek layout, and I'm going to finish it up, but I just thought I'd like to put it there to see how it's going to look. You know, the hill will kind of come up through here and probably end up like right about there, so I'll cut that off. But I just had that on there until I knew exactly how high it was going to go. But that kind of helps reinforce the fascia that's going to come through here. Okay, so that's it for this building season. Again, I'll probably do a few other things, but as we kind of close this out, we'll just watch this short little train of loaded coal hoppers make its way past some form of scenery here, just to kind of see how it all fits in proportion.